Yeah. Protection from harm, right? Doesn't need to be motivated with anger. Right? Even on a non-Buddhist platform in martial arts, for example, you learn to be in control and to defend yourself without getting angry. So that's possible. No, we learned that. Our Taekwondo teacher was always like that. He said, first you talk. If that doesn't work, you walk away. If that doesn't work, then you defend, right? So, but then also there the clue is kind of, if anger takes over, then the mind loses control, right? So you cannot prevent things in a very constructive way. You know, that's one aspect. And the main harm comes from within. Right? The main harm comes from destructive emotions. So that's the main harm giver or the main enemy, so to say. The person who is getting angry at you, he or she, deep inside, doesn't want this disturbance of mind. It's just overpowered temporarily. Right? So the real enemy is not the person, but actually the destructive emotion in the mind of that person. That's a very Buddhist approach, and that seems to be quite realistic. Yeah, that's the real kind of the real enemy, so to say. One aspect. Another aspect, suppressing emotions is there's a lot of people who understand maybe not the way it's supposed to be understood when we apply antidotes to emotions, right? We don't suppress it. We do even better, because if you do a contemplation on the drawbacks of anger and the benefits of practice of patience or the benefits of loving kindness, you not suppress it at all. What you do, you observe what happened. And that's a much more better kind of approach than try to not think about it. Because if you just try to not think about it, it causes a problem later on, because it's still there. And if you observe from a neutral perspective, first of all, you accept it. Acceptance of different emotions are present. This is very positive. You know, we're not perfect human beings, so things come up and go. So we have to have this acceptance. Then the next step is analyze. What does it do? What does it do with your mind? And you be just very neutral and very straightforward and honest. Okay, I get angry at this person. My mind got disturbed. I lost the clarity of my mind. Couldn't say the things I actually supposed to be saying. I said something incorrectly, and the whole, relationship actually went worse instead of getting better. And you analyze it, with a neutral perspective. You don't get involved. So that's a kind of a very good way to deal with it. The acceptance is there, so you don't suppress it, and you just analyze and see, this is not a very constructive way of thinking this anger. So next time, in order to solve a problem, if my mind is more at peace and the clarity is there, then I can think about things more clearly and say more constructive things. And then you start to see the benefits of that constructive kind of approach, right? And that causes the transformation. So it doesn't have anything to do with suppressing. It's complete transformation. Because you teach yourself to follow these kind of destructive emotions. It's not going to bring you benefits. It's not going to bring benefit to others. It's kind of a transformation, right? It's nothing has to do with suppressing things. Yeah, that's one aspect, an important aspect. Other things has been examined in the past. You have to express your emotions. That doesn't work. Yeah, there's a lot of research being done in the early days when people thought that you have to express anger, and they had this kind of weekend courses. You could pay for some money and punch a few pillows or throw a TV set if you pay a bit more. But that they find out that didn't really work, because again, it feels there's a kind of relief, because there's pressure sitting, because you don't want to be in it. That's not good, right? That's suppressing. And then releasing it after also is not good, because it generates another habituation, right? So you want to do that again and again. So it's not very constructive. So the suppressing aspect of what happens when many people, I don't want to do this, don't want to think about it, is not good, because it's like a pressure cooker. I don't know. They have pressure cookers in the UK? No. Yeah. In India, we use little pressure cookers, especially make dal. This kind of lentil dish with some spices and everything. So I know if the pressure gets too high and the lid on top. You know, it's kind of happy. If it doesn't release the the pressure of the air, then it can be like a bomb. You know? So that means suppressing thing doesn't work. You know, and release the whole thing also doesn't work in an uncontrolled manner, because another habituation is. So then the approach is to accept it, observe it, be neutral, and see what it does, and then to transform it in a constructive way of generating more constructive forms of consciousness, like loving kindness or patience. And then you'll be so convinced in those constructive forms of consciousness that anger just doesn't come up anymore. You see? That's, after time. Yeah. And that doesn't go in the weekend.
Yeah. So the point is not to judge yourself as a bad person because you've been angry, for instance, yeah?
Yeah, because you don't judge. You see we're not perfect yet. We have qualities in our mind, and we have faults. We're not perfect, right? So those faults are created by destructive emotions, and you analyze. What does these things do to my mind and to others? And can I change it or not? And then you start with this transformation process of recognizing the faults of the destructive emotion and the benefits of a constructive one, and then you transform. Right? So then we go to what we say, you know, all the way up of the ladder to what we call liberation, or Jamyang, means to eliminate all these faults of the mind and to acquire more qualities. And that's possible. It's just a matter of time and effort, of course. Yeah. It doesn't come by itself. Yeah. So that's in our hands if we, you know, put some effort in that direction. And then I've seen people change over years, right? Not over weeks, but over years. People change. Initially very uptight with many situations, and then over time, slowly learning from your own mistakes, then people start to become much more cheerful and open in life and happy, more constructive way of happiness than being before. You know, so that's possible. It's just a matter of time and effort.
So you're also saying really that you're losing your fear of your emotions.
I mean, fear is a kind of ignorance, right? Fear is a kind of not knowing, kind of, if you fear emotions, it's also not a good thing, because it's nothing to be feared, right? And reality, to fear reality is also not a good thing. And many things of fear are also based on ignorance, not really knowing, oh, if this happens, this will happen, this happened, that will happen. You know, that's not a realistic approach. So if a destructive emotion comes, of course, I see myself, you know, sometimes goes better, and then some periods emotions are stronger. Yeah, I don't have to fear that because I know that's the nature of my mind, right? So it's just a matter of fact of applying more antidotes, and this acceptance is so important because then there's no fear. Same with COVID-19, same thing. There's no need to fear it. It's an acceptance of our reality, right? And acceptance of things that can happen. You know, that's part of and that reality is there. If you fear it, then you create a lot of kind of mental difficulty for yourself on top of any physical or mental problem you already have.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, it helps. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of in-depth. Yeah. And especially with the self, you know, with a concrete eye, just to make the picture complete for Carol, that in Western psychology, especially in general in Western society, the concept of I and self-centeredness is very strong in our society, right? And it's not always very constructive. And that in one interesting conversation between David Bohm and one, you know, psychiatrist and Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti asked a question to this psychiatrist of this self actually is not really there and is a cause of all these problems. Do you talk about it? And then this psychiatrist said he didn't really know how to answer that question, because we see that we never talk about these things. We only talk about, you know, sometimes, oh, you do this, or you do that, and that actually sometimes it enhances this self identity aspect. It is not really going to the root of the problem. So it's, and there's a little bit of uncommon approach in Eastern philosophy, like Buddhism, and certain aspects of, you know, the philosophy in Krishnamurti and other. So that goes down, especially to this ignorance we talked about in the morning. That's the real cause of the problems, you know. And if that's been addressed, then all the other things become easier. You know? Anyway, that's just to make the picture complete. Yeah, Maya.
Hey, Geshe-la. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah, okay. So I have a question, actually, also in my discussion group with Laura, I sort of like, and I was contemplating this for a while. We say that, you know, about renunciation and attachment and so on. So I think I also one time, like, asked you about it, but I mean, I'm still working with this. For instance, right, when we were in Bogaya, and we had these holiness teachings, and, you know, we were sitting on this, like, floor with this fluffed, you know, plastic thin with a butter tea and the bread and so on. But I couldn't be more happy. You know, I was super, it was like, this is where I need to be. You know, I didn't felt like I don't want to be anywhere else. And so I don't know if I could you say this is attachment and to what, because, you know, now that I don't have it because I'm stuck in Israel.
So you know, from the object of attachment.
No, it's like, you know, I don't know how to even relate to it, because this is, for me, that was, you know, they would offer me 5-star hotel in this tropic island, and I would say no, nay, you know, this is what I want, this is where I want to be. I felt so, you know. So how do you, I don't know, I mean,
it's partly mixed, right? I mean, in one way, if you're with this holiness teaching and sitting in the dust just on the floor, squeezing in with everybody, and, you know, get some tea over here sometimes. The tea boy run around. You know, it's kind of, in one way, it's a kind of, it doesn't have to be complete attachment. It's kind of an aspiration to be there in this kind of spiritual family, right? And to learn to be directly with His holiness is a kind of an aspiration or inspiration is there as well, right? It's kind of a pure aspect of it.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's true, right? But then, of course, then there can be attachment as well, you know, to be in that place, and then when you're not in that place, you feel uncomfortable, right? So there's a few aspects to that, probably, yeah. You know, to understand a particular situation where you cannot be there, you know, that is a kind of karmic thing, and that causes you to be attached to the place you want to be. But when it's not there, then you feel very uncomfortable, right? And even if you put you in a 5-star hotel, I had once same thing when I was stuck in London because of bomb threat. Heathrow closed down, and my father had his cremation. Right? So my brother organized a cremation the day after I should arrive, but I was stuck in London because I had a flight London-Amsterdam from Bangalore, you know. So I was in London, and I came in London, and you had to collect your luggage. I thought, oh, that's strange. Normally you just, you know, change flights and you go, right? And then they were announcing on the airport in the plane, they didn't say anything. Say all flights to Europe are cancelled. So then after 8 hours, 9 hours in the plane, it's kind of what's happening here, you know? And then, yeah, I had to call my brother and my mother saying, sorry, I can't make it because I'm stuck. So then British Airways and you know, incredible organization, people line up in buses and they brought me to a hotel. So I was staying in Victoria Hotel. It cost about £2,000 a night, right? But British Airways pays for it, or the government will ever pay for it. And meals, everything was being paid for, but it was not really a comfortable place to stay because I wanted to go home, right? So in that way, is the environment we are, so many things depends on the mind, right? So if you're in a very simple kind of place, you can be extremely happy, you know, with certain conditions. And if you're in a very luxurious place, but when the mind wants to be somewhere else, then that doesn't produce the happiness we're looking for. So it's an internal thing, you see. It proves so much that happiness or suffering depends so much on your mind. You know? So yeah, to be there is for me also. I was planning to go back. I have a lot of dear ones for me in South India as well. You know, so I was also really, and people expecting me to come back, but now it's just difficult, right? So, that's part of life, and not only part of life, but their aspirations or inspirations can also be mixed with attachment, right? So like you being with this holiness and the teaching is very inspirational. and that's not there now. So, you know, one way you bit attached or used to that way of life, and that's not there. For me, same thing. Hanging out in the monastery, see all my friends, and you know, the little one, and all those people. So I cannot do that now. So there's kind of aspect of wanting to do something, but not able. One of the sufferings we discussed, right? To meeting the situation not meeting the situation you'd like to meet. It's the same thing. And meeting situations you don't like to meet. It's exactly what we're experiencing with these kind of things. And that you see, it's normally life is quite comfortable and things flow quite well, but then we don't realize this aspect. And now we see this aspect, and then we find it difficult to deal with it. You know, so it's always never really good understood from the point of view of samsaric suffering. So now it's time to see that actually this is an aspect of samsaric suffering. This is an aspect we should learn from and contemplate. You know, that's kind of, and then it's a very constructive kind of experience, because we cannot do anything about it anyway at the moment. So better try to take, you know, a lesson from this and see it's, wow, this is samsara, this is suffering, you know. And not only this is suffering we don't like, but this is created by this web of karma and afflictions, right? And so, yeah, so we can think in that way. And, yeah, that's how it is. And there's nothing point to worry about it too much, because that's really not going to solve the problem. It's not going to bring us to where we want to be, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering within this, like, because when we talk about death and so on, so you sort of like think, what the best thing for me to do? And now, you know, being here, I have to also work, right? So like most of my time right now, I have to work also. So it's sort of like taking my attention from, you know, in a way, of course, you try to put, you know, as much as you can, you know, mindfulness and the aspects of Buddhism, and I do educational stuff. So I try to bring that into what I do, right? But also I'm sort of like debating within myself, should I try to go maybe to a retreat, or like, I mean, I don't know what's the best thing within the situation. I have no idea, you know? It's sort of like within this, how you find a balance.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, on a daily basis, we can make a schedule, right, for yourself, and think about these aspects of Lamrim, right, so that we can contemplate. Yeah, so you can make some time for that process. You know, it's, and to worry about it or to get upset about it is not really going to solve the problem. And at the moment, India is also not really. I was thinking the same thing. I mean, you can go, but it's not really a very good place to be. So then it's better just to stay where you are and try to do the best under the circumstances. But still, you know, you're so fortunate to have a connection over Zoom with other kind of organizations or other kind of teachings with Tushita here and maybe Tibet House. And so there's kind of so many things we can still do, right? There's so many people on this planet who are completely stuck. Yeah, or even more stuck, not even knowing the things we discussed. That's real stuck in samsara.
Yeah, I was thinking actually the COVID-19 in that matter was like wonderful for all the people who cannot come to Dharamsala or Bodh Gaya. I mean, for them, that was amazing what's going on right now.
Yeah.
That's a positive thing. It's a really positive thing that came out of the corona, I have to say. Yeah.
So in that way, we take that into the practice, I should say. And for the time being, that's the only thing we can do, right? So for me, same thing. Yeah, that's how we try to slowly get more understanding of samsara. And, try to have a kind of relaxed mind towards these kind of situations. Yeah, one day it will end, right? So it's just I mean, a matter of a few months maybe, but because if it comes to an end one day, that's how it is. Yeah, comes, bites, and disintegrates. The whole planet one day. It's only said. He said one day, you know, in over many periods of time, of you know, quite some years, then you know, more things will degenerate, and then one day maybe the whole world starts to burn, you know. Yeah. And then someone said, okay, we're just to go to the Pure Lands. It's kind of, you know, that's kind of vast vision, you know, kind of whatever circumstances we face and it's difficult, we try to deal with the best way we can. And then, because we became able to do that, then in the future when obstacles come, we know again how to deal with it, again how to deal with it, again how to do it. The process goes and goes until slowly we can deal with all kind of issues. Yeah. And then because of the purification of negative karma, as well as accumulation of merit, as well as strong prayers. Then we go to other places when it becomes too difficult in one place.
Yeah. Sort of like we explained the whole mess that happened in Mungud and Bulgaria just before. I think the COVID-19 was sort of like the explanation of all the craziness that happened before, you know, with the teaching being canceled and then going there and going there and so on. And you know, the funny thing that's one of the most beautiful things I remember from His Holiness teaching that he was saying in the teachings, that it was quite surprising, but he said that whomever think about him, if he comes to the end of his life, he will always be there with you.
Yeah,
and that was really like beautiful and sort of like I understand, I think, better now. Yeah, why it was so.
Yeah, so just keep connected and purify this kind of negative karma and make strong prayers, and then lifetime after lifetime we're capable of dealing with even more situations. You know, and then we improve. Okay? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, let's see. Gil. Yeah. Come again. Yeah.
Hi, thank you, Geshe. Quite well, not often, but once in a while, I find myself thinking about how come it's so difficult, thinking of myself, to accept that I'm suffering, you know, to recognize this. And I guess this has to do with, you know, with the Buddha's words, you should know your suffering. Is it know your suffering or understand?
You know suffering, yeah.
And I guess part of it is really part of it just means accept that you are suffering, like know this, that you are suffering. Recognize your situation as suffering and not as something else.
Yeah.
And I guess because this is it's dialectic, because part of the suffering is not accepting your suffering. This is like, and I was thinking from the perspective of Buddhism, why is it so difficult for us sometimes to accept or to see that we are suffering, and to just, you know, just take it as it is. Fine, we're suffering. Like there's something that, you know, it could be so scary or so threatening about this.
Yeah. So there's a few things to that. One thing, of course, if you study the Four Noble Truths, the first truth is the truth of suffering, as we saw, right? The Buddha said you should know suffering. So there's 4 aspects to that, you know, and 4 obstacles or incorrect forms of consciousness, misunderstanding. And one of them is to see suffering as happiness, meaning this contaminated happiness we have is actually the nature of suffering. If we don't believe it in that way, we think it's happiness. Right. So and why is it so? Because we don't really understand what this contaminated happiness is, you know. Because it's going to change into suffering, but we don't understand it because we grasp to whatever little happiness we have and try to keep it, right? But that's not possible. And then suffering is something that is unwanted, right? And like death and impermanence and other aspects of suffering, that's why people initially try to avoid thinking about it. Same with death and impermanence. Yeah, so death and impermanence is a little bit more easy to understand than this kind of contaminated form of happiness that is suffering, right? You can see that, right? That death and impermanence is easy to see as a reality than this contaminated happiness being suffering. Yeah, it's a bit more difficult. So then death and impermanence, the majority of the world of people don't like to talk about it, right? So you can see then, if you don't like to talk about death and impermanence, forget your understanding of suffering of samsara. There's no way you will start to understand it. You can see the different levels of possibility of understanding, and also we can see why people and why we ourselves try to avoid thinking about it. Yeah, because initially it's not nice. Initially it's nice to be happy, right? But if you think about the suffering as real suffering, actually that makes you more happy because you start to really understand the problem and you see a way out of it, and that gives you a very positive approach. Yeah, and then you can take also difficulties into the past, and then you don't worry about it too much. You know? Yeah, does it help?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Carol again? Yeah.
If possible, very quick. Great, thank you.
Quick, yeah.
What's the difference between afflictions that are views and those that are non-views?
Yeah.
Why the difference in definition on
Very
that?
good question. Yeah. So a view is kind of based on reasoning. We have one mental factor called the mental factor analysis, or sometimes we say wisdom, but it's not a wisdom in the sense it has to be virtuous. Right? It's kind of shera, we say in Tibetan, which is kind of knowledge, you know, to analyze things. So afflictive views, right, are views that is based on an analytical approach. Yeah, for example, you can use a very intelligent mind, understanding quantum mechanics, come to wholeness, like Bohm did, and think about environmental issues and solving issues, you know, on the planet's problems. But you can also use that intelligence to make an atomic bomb and destroy it, right? So analysis or intelligence can be used in various ways, in a positive way and an negative way. So if you have a lot of intelligence and it produces these kind of destructive thoughts, it's kind of an afflictive view, you know, you see that? It's kind of a view that is an affliction as well. But if you don't have this intelligence and don't analyze things and just say, you know, I cannot change, like that, is also an affliction, but not a view. You see that? So a view is based on an analytical approach and coming to a conclusion. And with afflictions in that regards is not a very positive one. Yeah, you can relate to that, Carol? Yeah. With intelligence, maybe you can think.
I think it's a case of understanding what a non-view is then. I can probably understand the intellectual one very well, but the contrast, the contrast with how our organism functions with those, you know, as a human.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So that means that there's many people on this planet who don't like to question things. We just say, oh, I cannot change. Yeah, that's the way it is, or there's no cause and effect, it doesn't exist, you know, or there is a self, but not really analyzing it, right? So that's a kind of a non-view, but incorrect form of consciousness. And when you analyze and you come to the conclusion and say, oh, there's no cause and effect because of this and this and this and this, it's kind of afflictive view. Yeah,
so the non-views are basically more emotional.
I mean, we say both are emotions, but emotional in the sense of not having analyzed it, just whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
You know, while the afflictive views is based on an analytical approach, right? Yeah, and then not a correct one. Yeah. So then I put back the intelligence also has two aspects, no? So positive one and negative one. Yeah, and the negative one falls in this category of afflictive views. Yeah, is that clear?
Yeah. Well, we see some of this with the mind and mental factors.
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, good. I look forward to that. Yes.
So you're doing the BP, is it?
Yes. Yeah, so we will do this. Yes.
So you will be the Tsigadao Juja, as we say. Who means the right disciple for mind and mental factors, because mostly when you start with mind and mental factors, people drop out.
Oh no, I really want to look at that. Thank you very much.
That's why you are the Tsigadao Juja.
Thank you.
Specific kind of disciple for mind and mental factors. No, joking aside, but yeah, we will juice up that subject quite a bit when we start. It's a quite dry material, but very important and very essential. Yeah, and you learn so much if you apply it in your daily life and you see what is the definition of this mental factor. You know, because then we talk exactly about these things we're talking about now. What does that mean? Using intelligence to analyze and without intelligence. You know, what are the mental factors? Yeah, anyway, we come to that.
Yeah, there's a list of emotions in the reading we had for this week, which just has the Tibetan name. It's very interesting. So I thought I would do I would try and assess the emotion and work backwards, because it's not translated. In the list, it just has the Tibetan and then the description. So I look forward to all the elaboration. Thank you.
Yeah, we have to wait for another year or something. I think over a year. But yeah, it's very interesting material. All right, Sesa, that's it. Okay, thank you so much. For amazing kind of questions and discussing and thinking about things. So that's very positive altogether. And because of that positive thing, we created kind of good karma, as we say, or positive potentials, and then we dedicate that always towards a great purpose. And then we talked about the importance of making a prayer or a wish, again and again. It's very essential for this and future lifetimes. So try to dedicate all the good things we discussed today and not yesterday, or maybe also you did yesterday, but so whatever we discussed today, and try to dedicate for particular purposes for the long and healthy life of precious teachers and the spreading of Buddha Dhamma and Bodhicitta, and emptiness to be realized, and yeah, a few other verses we read in English, so you see what we do. And I think that oneself and all sentient beings are in the nature of dependent origination. You making the prayer, and the prayer itself, and the aim we pray towards too, also enter in non-existence, the nature of dependent origination. That's why the prayer comes true. Yeah. So for the spreading of good Dharma, you want to do this? Yeah, sure. And then we dedicate. Yeah. Yeah, spreading of Buddha Dharma. Holiness. Rinpoche and all other precious teachers, yeah. As long as space remains, and as long as sentient beings remain, until then may too remain to dispel the suffering of my dreams. May the King of Dharma Sankappa's way of Dharma practice flourish. May the omens of obstacles be pacified, and may all conditions be complete. To the power of having made single pointed request to you, O Lord Sankappa, by the fortunate manifestations of degenerate age, illness, memory, quarreling, epidemics, diseases, common spirits, interferences, and support be pacified, and extended collections of convicted conditions of increase. Please bless me, and the wishes be fulfilled. By invoking the power of loving kindness, of compassion, of generosity, and through the force of making extensive prayers, may the sickness and fighting and famine be completely pacified, so that beings have healthy and happy lives. May the glorious Guru's life be long and stable, well beings equally extended space and happiness. May I know his merits and negativities. May we quickly be blessed to achieve the state of enlightenment. All right, thank you so much, and then yeah, see you tomorrow, I believe. Yeah. Okay, see you tomorrow then, 10 o'clock. Be there. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Same place, same time, same channel. Okay, see you tomorrow. Bye. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.